As we saw in the Bud Light controversy, country music takes its beer seriously. But while a few beers is often a recipe for a good time, it can also be a trap for many country musicians. Since the days of Hank Williams, some of country's finest have struggled with sobriety, and it's taken the lives of countless talented stars. But not all have fallen victim to this vicious vice. Some of the most respected names in country music have successfully turned that tempting page, becoming completely sober. In fact, some of them are ones you may not expect. What's happening? Today we're looking at country stars that, against all odds, defeated their addictions and are now stone cold sober. We're gonna examine the shocking depths that their drinking took them to, from total destitution to cruise ship catastrophes. We're gonna find out how each of them found the strength to overcome that sometimes sinister substance. You may not look at your favorite musician the same again, but hey, you may gain even more respect for them too. If you enjoyed the deep dive, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so you never miss a beat. Now pull up a chair, grab a beer. Actually, no, do not grab a beer as we go find out.
What happened?
Keith Urban. Keith Urban's music has been the soundtrack to countless parties because he wants his fans to have a good time. Now, Keith doesn't talk about his sobriety much, but it's a lesser-known fact that this New Zealand-born megastar struggled with addiction for decades before he turned his life around. Really, for one shocking reason. One of the recipes for a country musician is having an alcoholic dad. Now, this is kind of a joke, but Keith is no exception, and his father was certainly no stranger to the bottle. And Keith, too, inherited this tendency and was depending on substances from quite a young age. But he never realized he had a problem because he never put back as much as his dad did. So he thought there was no way he could be considered an alcoholic. When Keith moved to Nashville to kickstart his music career, he quickly found himself slipping deeper into addiction. But while some people are immediately kneecapped by alcoholism, some others, like Keith, are able to function perfectly well in the world while still depending on drinking. And let's face it, Keith did better than just function. The guy built a massive career, sold out stadiums, and even married Nicole Kidman. He was internationally famous, rich as all heck, and was about to spend the rest of his life with a movie star. But while Keith could manage a career and alcohol just fine, a healthy marriage was just a different story. And 4 months after the wedding, Keith's alcoholism was already pushing the newlyweds towards a divorce. But Nicole Kidman put faith in her new husband. She planned an intervention and convinced him to go into rehab. No, not exactly a relaxing honeymoon, but the place he needed to be. Keith, in turn, immortalized his wife's support in the 2009 song, Thank You.
My life used to be in hell without a single warning.
And to find out how Nicole liked that public tribute, you'll have to watch our separate Keith Urban video. Now seriously, let's give it up to Keith. He's been sober for 17 years, and here's to many, many more. Trace Adkins. Every alcoholic hits rock bottom in their own way. Some lose their families, others end up on the street. But Trace Adkins hit rock bottom in a truly astonishing way, and the way he defeated his addiction is no less shocking. Now, alcohol had been a long problem for Trace. In 2001, he entered rehab in Nashville shortly after the release of his Chrome album. And he was sober for many years after that, but it just wouldn't stick. In 2014, Trace was headlining a country cruise to Jamaica, and he began drinking heavily because he was on a cruise and that's all you really do. And this is when Trace spotted a Trace Adkins impersonator on board the boat. The country musician just lost it. He would enter rehab once more after the incident. Then, in the summer of 2016, he was drunk during a charity performance for St. Jude's Children's Hospital, impeding his performance so much that the audience walked out mid-concert. Now, some other musicians might look for excuses for these missteps. Trace had been through a lot, after all. In 1994, he was shot in the heart by an ex-wife. In 2014, his other wife, Rhonda, divorced him. And again, we have a whole deep dive of Trace if you want to watch that one next too. But Trace did take responsibility for his problems and refused to blame anybody else. And for the past few years, Trace has been sober. Let's just hope he's able to stick with it this time, as we believe he certainly deserves some peace after all he's been through. Steve Earle. Steve Earle has been a prolific and respected musician for decades. And believe it or not, he too is completely sober. But Steve went to some pretty dark places before cleaning it all up. Now, Earle grinded on the circuit for years before finally achieving critical and commercial success with some great albums like Guitar Town. And for a while, this success was intoxicating. But that high was soon replaced by another, a much more dangerous high, heroin. And it wasn't long until the drug began to control every aspect of Steve's life. Earle pawned just about everything he owned to get a fix and then another one. At the peak of his addiction, he was spending up to $1,000 a day on drugs. He was even living on the streets. Then he was sentenced to a year in jail for gun and drug charges. Few artists have had such a drastic fall from grace, and the ones that do often never recover. But Steve was evidently made of some stronger stuff, and ironically, it was jail that would save him, as he was forced to go cold turkey in the clinker. And when he got out, he was sober, repentant, and ready to start writing music again. Today, Steve is 68 years old and has been clean and sober for almost 3 decades, in which time he's continued to perform, write books and plays, and keep away from substances. Good on you, Steve. Good on you, man. Tim McGraw. In many ways, Tim McGraw is an ideal American family man. Between his patriotic catalog, his picture-perfect marriage, and his 3 beautiful daughters, Tim is the epitome of a guy who's got it all together. At least that's what it looks like. But beneath this photogenic exterior lurks a painful and shocking history. Tim began drinking for the boost of confidence it would give him, a handy thing to have while you're performing for thousands. And like many alcoholics, it took Tim a long time to realize he did have a problem. And over that time, things got worse and worse. He was performing most of his shows completely drunk on whiskey, and when he wasn't performing, he was doing even harder substances. Then, one morning, he found himself going to the liquor cabinet at 8 a.m. He probably would have descended even further into addiction had his wife, Faith Hill, not stepped in. She gave him an ultimatum. He could drink or he could have a family. He couldn't do both. So Tim McGraw checked himself into rehab, and he's not touched a drink since. And boy oh boy did the guy make the right choice. It turns out Tim McGraw didn't need the alcohol to perform well, and today he's continued his soaring music career, and he and Faith starred on TV together. You gotta check out the Yellowstone prequel, 1883. I'm tipping my hat to you, Tim, today. Oftentimes, our favorite musicians seem larger than life. While the rest of us slog through our mundane lives, they prance around stadium stages, marry movie stars, and star on TV shows, alongside their movie star wives. But these almost tragic tales teach us a valuable lesson, that even the most famous and successful people also struggle with the same addictions as the rest of us. And when they're able to beat those addictions, they do so because they rely on the same things we do: family and loved ones. So while it may be concerning to see even the rich and famous struggle with substances, I believe it's inspiring to know that we have access to the same lifelines that they do. So first off, if you or anyone you know is struggling with addiction, please seek help. Now, did I forget any famous country musician who has also quit an addiction? Get in the comments and tell me some more. Which country star that I mentioned is your personal favorite? Tell me who, and tell me a song to listen to. Now before you get out of here, please hit that thumbs up icon to show us some support. Subscribe to our channel, and come back often so we can keep telling you
What happened?